me about it. Come on, let's talk about it. Change up the things you see. Open your mind to possibilities. Find your power, passion, and your purpose. You know it's time for you to walk in greatness. Let's murder mediocrity. Slay your goals, live out your dreams. Right now. Inspirational Perspective.
What I want to talk about today, having been gone for an entire month, is obviously closing out 2021, and how can I support you in 2022? And I really do want to hear from the listeners today. Like, what do you want to hear on the Inspirational Perspective radio show going into 2022? And normally how I've done this in the past is I'll send out a survey to the email list, but I'm also very clear that many of you who listen week in and week out aren't on that email list and aren't going to be taking that survey. So I want to hear directly from you all. What is it that you wanted to hear? And talk about a lot of other things, like what I did all month and how that impacted me over the last 20, how many ever days it's been since I've been gone. So we'll be talking about that. I'll be talking about the impact of taking that time away. Definitely an impact. I'll be talking about scuba diving in Archipelago de Revillagigedo, which is another way of saying, well, you could also say Socorro Island. It's a marine park about a little less than 2 days off the coast of Mexico. And just amazing. I'll be talking about that. I want to hear about what you want to hear in 2022, and then talk a little bit about preparing for 2022 as well.
Oh, man. Yeah, good to hear your voice again, Brother Live. So, real quick, man, I just wanted to touch on the subject, if I may, about looking forward to 2022 and the things that, I want to happen personally. As you can see, there are a lot of negative things happening throughout the world. And I think we should try to focus on more of the positive things. And there are a lot of good things that's going on in the world that's not being talked about, especially here in Chicago.
Yeah, true.
And you being gone for a month gives me a chance to sing you something else with my Word About Yourself brand. I actually have an animated cartoon on YouTube now. And
okay.
It's just, I just got it.
What's the channel?
The second one. The Boston Ways. Just go to YouTube, The Boston Ways, or you can go to my website, thebostonways.com.
You said in the Boston Ways.
Yeah, The Boston Ways. You'll see a dog. You'll see a cartoon. But what I'm doing is I'm trying to get more exposure brought to my brand as well. It's a positive brand, and we as shoppers or consumers, we wear all the other brands, Nike, Gucci, Balenciaga, whatever, which is fine, but
right.
I want to bring more exposure to, our brand, my brand, if you will. So the Boston Ways, like I said, I've been in business for 2 years, but I'm working on some things to try to get more exposure to my brand. And your radio station is the only wave right now that I can use because it's a black radio station, which I appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk about my brand, my book, and that's pretty much it, brother. I'm pushing. I'm starting already before 2022.
As you should. As you should. And it sounds like you're clear about what you want to achieve in 2022, man. So,
man, I talk about you so much to other people, and I influence people to listen. I say, man, y'all need to listen to WVON on Sunday morning, And nothing wrong with GCI and other stations. I listen to them as well, but some of the stuff that you talk about, none of the other stations talk about. So your uniqueness is what we need more of, especially with, like I said, the way that things are going in the world where everything is exposed for the most part in a negative light. There are some good things happening. Your suggestions about relationships, about businesses, about your purpose, walking in your purpose.
But I wanted to say in the future, I would hope that you do more programs about the impact of children, because under the age, as a Montessorian, I know this, but a lot of people don't, you can, a child under the age of 4 years old has 80% of all of his information if he lives to be age 2000. So you are actually educating the subconscious brains of children. And this, your space and other spaces that's going into all the world, it is essential that if we want to stop violence, we've got to start at the age of preschool and not wait until the children have already figured things out for themselves. And in conclusion, like the little 14-year-old being interviewed as a hijacker said, they asked, he said that he got the idea from Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
And it looked like it was fun, and he went out and tried it, and it was fun, jacking cars, and they asked him, are you going to do it again? He said, oh, yeah. So it's a sacred space, and I'm glad that you are one of the few people that comes over the airwaves. You know who the prince of the airwaves is, Lucifer, the evil devil. So that you really seem to recognize that it is a sacred space, and that you feel it with quality time. And so I appreciate you for that. And say hey to the family. And that little legend, he's already a legend.
Yes, thank you for that. Thanks so much for that, Mama D. I wrote it down. I'll definitely be thinking about ways to do that. You're right. And the children are our future. And unless we do something quickly, the current generation, I mean, we have a lot of bright stars in this current generation. But what we don't want is for those bright stars to be snuffed out by those who haven't been raised properly. And those possibilities are high given the violence we have, even in just this city. So, no, thanks for that. Great comment. I shared this one with my wife so I'm reading Dune. And by the way, Dune is now a motion picture. It's a motion picture. I had been told to read it before it came out as a motion picture. And so I decided, well, I'm going on vacation. I'll read the book because I think we all know that books are better than movies. And in this case, it's much better. But something really jumped out at me. There's a part in the book, and this is pretty well in, where the main character's name is Paul. And this goes right in line with what Mama D was talking about with our children. And him and his mother, they're in this, I don't want to give it away, but they're in this tense situation where they're fearing in many ways for their lives. And the book then goes to say, and by the way, this is what she taught her son. So she taught her son something, and in that moment, he taught her back. And this is the beauty of it. Because even now, like, Legend will teach us back. He's 4 years old, and he'll teach us back. As a matter of fact, Legend was with me in the hot tub while we were on vacation, and the waiter comes up, and he's saying, hey, what do you all want to eat? My wife was like, hey, it's lunchtime. And so I'm ordering food, and I order Legend vegetarian tacos. And there was a sister, older sister in the hot tub who Legend and I were having a conversation with. And I say Legend and I because he was holding his own in that conversation for sure. And she went, vegetarian? He eats vegetables? And, of course, he's like, yes, I eat vegetables. Vegetables are good for the body. Now, this is the way he's been trained. And she seemed absolutely shocked by this, that he eats vegetables. And I'm like, yeah, he starts his meals with a salad. Like, he'll eat a whole salad. As a matter of fact, the night before, I had put a whole salad in front of him. There were no complaints. This is just normal, right? Let's ate the salad. And then we went back and got the full course meal. Like, this is how he's been, in many ways, like, mentally trained. And I'm saying that because we've all been mentally trained in some capacity. And so when I'm reading this book, right away, I see where the mother has trained her son. and how that training comes back to support her in the future. And this is one of the reasons we have to pour into our children, because it will come back and support you. And so right here it says calmness drained out of her. Her name is Jessica. Jessica felt her teeth chatter, clamped them together. And then she heard Paul's voice, low and controlled, reciting the litany she had taught him. Fear is the mind killer. Fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it has gone past me, I will turn to see fear's path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing. Only I will remain. And that actually ends a chapter. Man, I read that. I'm like, oh, babe, you got to, She's like, what? Wait. I'm like, you got to read this. This is amazing. Because one of the things I talk about on the air all the time is fear. And just reading this book and listening to this litany, and I wrote it down, as you can see. I made a copy of it. I thought, wow. Because, again, talking about teaching our children, she had taught him this litany, and then she heard him saying it. And it reminded her in that tense situation that they got through, by the way, that fear is the mind killer, and fear is the little death that brings total obliteration. Now, the only thing I could think about when I read that is purpose, and how many people's purposes have been obliterated by fear because they're afraid to take the leap, afraid to push forward, afraid to do what it is that they're supposed to do. And then they say, I will face my fear. This is, I guess, why Frank Herbert is such a phenomenal author, because he wrote all this. I will face my fear. I will permit it to pass over me and through me. And when it is gone past me, I will turn to see its fear's path. Where the fear has gone, there will be nothing, only me. And I think that's so true, because at the end of all the things that you feel, on the other side, what's left is us. And did you go through that fear? Like, did you navigate it, or did you allow it to shift your path? And that's the piece. Like, I'll see the path that fear took because I didn't take that path. Love that. Loved it, loved it, loved it. I had to absolutely share that.
That therapy that you have gone through, you are actually giving us some aspects of that. I noticed it having taken your Slay Your Goals class.
Ah, yeah.
Uh-huh. And so I raised this question on the chat room section. Don't you consider this a form of therapy? And you never answered me.
Oh, you know what? And I might not have seen this. Let me answer it now.
Okay.
Yes and no. And the reason, so let me be clear about why I say no. Because there's something powerful about personal therapy that is fully aligned with you and fully aligned with helping you take a look at your past, take a look at any trauma or wounds that took place in your past that you may be ignoring, but in many ways are impacting current behavior, or in some ways keeping you from your ability to go after your goals. Because often what happens with trauma, and why therapy is so important, is, put it like this. There were many things that I couldn't understand why I couldn't do. And I remember being in my early 20s, like asking myself, well, why do I always put things off? Or why am I afraid to take this leap? Or why am, like, asking myself, and I hopefully listeners listening, like many of you probably have or have similar experiences where you're like, why do I eat these foods that I know I shouldn't eat? Or why, like all these different things. There is so much that is wrapped up in the wounds that we received while we were young people. I think this is one of the reasons why Mama D's request about the impact of children is such a powerful request. I could go on and on. For instance, finding out that a female client that's overweight, once she received therapy, the reason why she had been overweight for years is because she used the weight to protect herself from men. But you don't learn that. Like, that's just one example. That's not everybody's situation, right? But she wouldn't have learned that without therapy. Otherwise, it would have been a question of, why can't I lose weight? And then she would have had that question for the rest of her life. I can think about myself when it comes to relationship. Why can't I stay in a committed, monogamous relationship? Well, therapy helped me understand why I couldn't. So that's why I say yes and no. The yes part is simply that if you work with me, I'm going to lead you to a therapist. And that is therapy in itself, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but I'm not a therapist. I'm a coach. But the reason I say I'm going to lead you to a therapist is because at some point, if you continue to set audacious goals, you're going to run into something that, that there's a barrier against, because there's healing that's necessary. And as a coach, I'm going to say, go get that healing. Don't let it stop you. Go get that healing so you can accomplish this thing.
All right. Thank you for that.
Okay. So great comments by Michelle. Michelle says something real quick that I want to comment on, and then Kevin, I'm going to come to you. About grief therapy. So I'm still in grief therapy, by the way. I can't say I'm done grieving. As a matter of fact, Friday was a pretty tough day. Even with me being away, just a pretty tough day. And it was just in my space. It's Christmas Eve, and my mom's gone. And even though I tried to change the setting completely by being out of the country, the thoughts, the memories those you can't change that. You can't take that away. I've learned a lot in grief therapy, let me tell you, and I'm incredibly grateful. As a matter of fact, I don't think I've shared this, but so my mom passed in July. I took the remainder of July off, and the first couple of weeks of August went really, really slow back into the work thing. And I realized the first week in August that I couldn't really work at the same capacity. As a matter of fact, I think I'm just now beginning to get back to where I used to be in terms of productivity and capacity to do work. That is how powerful grief is. And for anyone who's lost a parent or a loved one who's incredibly close to them, this. I think until it happens to you, you will never understand. And one of the things I thought about is, man, in the past as a leader, even in corporate America, did I give people the space to grieve the way I should have? And I know in the future I will, but the things we don't know, man. And so that definitely hit me. And I think the other thing that really hit me is when someone else hasn't experienced that level of grief. Even if they think they have context, they don't. And the space that people are willing to give you, and sometimes the space they're not willing to give you because they think you should be okay. That's been a learning, and something that's very difficult to be with, that you have to learn to be with, especially in relationship. Not just with a spouse, but with the many other people you're in relationship with. The biggest gift I've gotten in therapy is when my therapist told me to actually create scheduled time to grieve. And for anyone who's grieving, I want to pass this to you. That was the biggest gift, to actually schedule time to grieve. And the hardest part has been actually honoring those times, because you're going into this grief space, and it's a lot. But it's been, I would say, that time, Monday evenings and Wednesday evenings for me, that time has been what has allowed me to function in the way that I function. And it's still not 100%. But there's so many things I can see, like, man, that's not how I do things. But it's just, I got to give myself space. Even now, some of the things that are happening, taking December off, that was a result of therapy. I wouldn't I don't think I would have done that because it's my busiest time of the year as a coach. But it's like, you come first. And so I'm definitely learning that in grief therapy. And so I will definitely, I don't know that I'm adequately prepared right now, Michelle, to share lessons about grief that I've learned from therapy, because I'm still learning and I'm still definitely in the process. But as I round that corner, I have it on the list, and it's something I will definitely share. So thanks for asking. Now, let me say this. I was beginning to say this before we went to break, and I didn't share it completely. So my mom passed mid-July, took the rest of that time off, going into August, started back really slow, capacity really low. My wife, she probably knows better than I do, but I was under so much stress and pressure after my mom passed, and I also believe it was part of me not grieving properly that I broke out with shingles. All across my side, man. I mean, painful. It was bad. And I hadn't gone to therapy yet, so it's September, and I realized right away. I mean, I began realizing that shingles were breaking out on a Monday morning. I think I hired my therapist Monday afternoon. I'm like, all right, you can't do this by yourself. You just can't do it by yourself. Soon as I saw that physical manifestation, I'm like, man, nah, And so I hired my therapist. Part of how I hired my therapist is by talking to other colleagues, other coaches. And the therapist I chose does internal family systems work. They call it IFS. You can look it up. And IFS therapists come with 3 levels of certification. And so because I was in dire need, I went with the highest certified person and hired them on the spot after a conversation. I just knew that they became highly recommended. When they gave me the price, I took a deep breath and said, okay, because I need the support, and made it happen. And I think that's the other thing. One of the reasons we avoid therapy often is because, the price. There's nothing more important than you. And we got to get to that point. If you're willing to put expensive clothes on your body, then you have to be willing to put to spend money on your mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being.
We're entering this strange time right now, and I don't know. Most people probably can feel it. If you are in touch with your third eye, you can feel something coming. Most people know it.
It's not coming, brother. It's here. And I think it's a matter of whether or not we actually allow it to settle and become the way, or we're willing to fight it. And my fear is that most of us have become, this is why I did the show about manipulation, that most of us have become so manipulated that they're just kind of pulling us along, and there's very little resistance, and the people who are resisting often are seen as weird. I saw this meme about conspiracy theorists, and I really don't want the show to be about this, but what it said, why is it that if I read multiple things, I look across multiple channels, and I consider every voice, that if I disagree or if I come up with what I believe is going on, it's considered a conspiracy theorist or a conspiracy theory versus just what could be another way of thinking about the problem. And I think that's where, and part of it is where we are now with social media. The algorithms, they isolate us. There's nothing in my algorithm that disagrees with me, that gives me ways to that. So I have to be intentional about looking across the aisle.
Exactly.
And if I'm not intentional about looking across the aisle, very quickly, I can become indoctrinated. Now, I don't think we understand what indoctrination is. But indoctrination is nothing more than believing in something that I'm hearing over and over again to the point that it becomes my truth. Because remember, I heard it before, and the first time I heard it, there was a question mark. But now I've heard it so much that it's become my truth. That's indoctrination.
Ooh, man. Can I talk about truth real quick? Now that you mentioned that in connection with the movie Doom, and in terms of the drinking of the water of life, and converting that. But the water of life is a symbolic. It represented truth. Could you handle the truth?
Yeah.
And apparently his mom was able to do that because she was able to live and convert the water of life into drinkable water. She was able to handle the truth.
But let's not forget that many had come before her that couldn't handle it and they died.
Yep.
So
exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think that was a beautiful analogy.
There's a lot
between that and our plight. You can peel that onion back.
I mean, there's a lot of it. And I want to get off Doom because I know most of the audience hasn't read it. But, there's so many. I guess, if anything, they can be encouraged to read it because there's so many parallels to what's going on today.
Can I give you my suggestions for your show?
Please.
It's two of them. I would like to.
Please.
Well, while we're talking about external and reparations, that's in the hopper. Internal reparations is what I see a lot of our people trying to do, and without help, we're trying to mend the gap, the huge chasm between black men and black women that was caused by our oppressors. We're trying to fix that ourselves right now, and so this is why you're hearing all of this rhetoric about masculine and feminine energy and how our plight was messed up, and we're trying to recalibrate ourselves, and we're doing that by ourselves. So that's one thing I think you could focus on. The next one I think is, I said, race between men and women, and then more collaborations with people like Ernest Fenton. I like that when you guys do that series. I like the series Iron Sharpening Iron, because I think that as one of our saving graces is, as men, black men, we are going to have to get together, because although our women are hollering they don't need us, we're going to have to get together and go get them anyway. No matter what they're talking about. If we got to go get them, we're going to go get them. We're going to come get you, sisters. We're not going to leave you by yourselves. However, we got to do some work within ourselves with them. And I think you and Ernest.
That's true. And you know what? All of us need to do work. All of us.
Well, I would be willing to help too, but all of us, I'm talking about men. I'm not talking about women. We got to come together as men and find out some practical things that we could start doing in the community.
Oh, true. Absolutely.
And I think if we had a way to bring all of our men together, with our plumbers, with our electricians, with our carpenters, with our financial experts, with our businessmen, with our teachers, all of these people come together. And then the last point I want to make, Ernest, is when we come together as men, we got to understand that you have two sides of your sword. You have a cutting edge and you have a file. And when we get together as men, we got to start filing each other, sharpening each other's edges. Let's not waste time doing a whole. If you know some stuff, teach your brothers.
Right.
Please, let's start doing it. Let's stop wasting time when we come together, bull crapping around. If you know you can pull your brother up with some knowledge or some skills, let's help one another, because we are in dire times right now, and they ain't playing with us. So we got to come together and stop playing.
This one here, man, when I tell you, so these are hammerhead sharks that you're looking at. And if you're on the radio, then you just kind of listen to my voice. But these are hammerhead sharks. This particular video was not shot by me. This was shot by one of my diving buddies, Robbie, who got the closest. But you can see a school. This is about 100 hammerhead sharks that we end up swimming into. And what they often say is we dive near a reef, and then when you go out into the blue, what you mean by going out into the blue, you go out into the ocean away from the reef, then you begin to run into this type of life. And how we know they're out there is we'll be by the reef, we'll be diving by the reef, and you'll have maybe the manta rays or other smaller animals, and then out of nowhere you'll see a hammerhead shark come. And there's never just one, right? there's never just one. So if you follow it back out into the blue, we never do that alone. We do it with a dive master who knows that particular part of the ocean. But if you follow it back out, that's when we ran into that wall. It was like a wall. And my heart is not normally beating fast under the ocean, but in this particular case, man, we're swimming after this shark, and of course, you can't catch any of these animals. I mean, that's their domain, right? So we follow the direction, and as we follow the direction, you end up running into a few more, right? And then that few more becomes a multitude of life. And that was, I would say, that moment, my heart started beating not because of fear. I think it was this exhilaration. Like, wow. The last time that happened to me was in the South Pacific when I dived on top of a school of Hammerhead Sharks. And when I say on top of a school, you look down and you see them. I didn't dive right on top of them, But you dive in, I'm about 10, 15 feet down. I'm beginning to regulate. And as I look down, we're all looking, and there were probably about 50 hammerheads that were about 100 feet down. It's that was an amazing, amazing experience. And this happened because someone in my network had done it, thought that I would enjoy it. And because I did not let fear get the best of me, I said, well, you know what? And this is how I've always been with these type of things, just to kind of help you all know how my mind works. I look up the stats, how dangerous is scuba diving? And if it's not more dangerous than driving, I do it because I will get in the car and drive every day, right? And not think about it. And so if it's not more dangerous than driving is a skill. And if I can learn the skill, then I'll do it. That's kind of how I think about it. And it's one of the ways that I actively go after my fears in life, that I'm willing to do almost anything if statistically I know that it's safe. And so that means that the only thing that's keeping me from doing it, the only thing that's creating fear is either a story that I've been told. By the way, most of us have been told stories that sharks are bad, and that sharks will kill you, and that sharks eat people, and we watch Jaws. And so then you see some sharks. Hammerhead sharks are incredibly docile, never known to mess with men or women. We see sharks, oh, my God. And it's like, no, you've been informed that way. And most of our fears come from being uninformed. Most of our fears come from being uninformed. The more informed you are, the less fear you have.
Man, thanks for being the trailblazer, my brother.
Appreciate
First
that.
of all, yeah, because, the stuff you do, you getting these people on the radio for free. Most people don't even bother. And our people need it more than anybody. So I'd say again, thanks for being the trailblazer. Number one, we ought to challenge ourselves, Linal. I'm over 65 years, and that's retirement age, right?
Mm-hmm.
But why do I get job offers from top companies weekly, even in a so-called tough job market?
You must be.
What happens is
you must be valuable, brother.
Right. I teach people you got 10 fingers, right?
Yeah.
You got 10 talents that you got to develop and find out what they are. If you can do that, you don't have any problems in life at all.
Now you're speaking my language.
Now there is more to life than just making money, right? Everybody's talking about money, 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 right? But you need to keep in touch with wisdom, knowledge, and understanding so that when you do get some money, you know what to do with it, right?
Yeah.
If you spend it the wrong way, you won't have it. Lastly, when you do a job, apply yourself. It's what makes it. It's the attitude, that positive attitude you use that makes a difference. And lastly, create a new tradition. Stop following the old paradigm. Seek some unity. Help people where they are. And then you will find your place in the universe. That's where you belong, not in some color of a skin, all that other stuff people belong. You got a bigger job, a universal job. It's not limited to your city, state, or your city, state, or your country. Why you think you leave in one country going to the other and taking other people? Because it's a universal move.
Mm-hmm.
Stop being short-sighted, y'all. Open up your mind. And don't be afraid. because you're afraid to jump in the water and snorkel. See how much fun you having now? Challenge your fear. And what's on the other side of it?
We gotta
challenge your fear. What's on the other side of that?
Challenge it, no doubt.
And stop serving the Most High out of fear. Serve him in reverence. Be obedient because he got your back. Appreciate you, man. Keep doing it, man.
All right. Awesome. Stop serving the Most High in fear. That's how that brother ended. Instead, serve him in reverence. That's huge. I heard this this biblical scholar talk about the Bible, and I thought it was really interesting. I'm really into the holy books, period, right? The Bible, the Quran, the Torah. And I just, if you're going to read, those are books to read. And so I watch YouTube videos often on things I don't understand. When I come across a passage I don't understand, I'll watch 10 different scholars talk about that passage, right? And listen to that, right? Because I think often we'll call one person and get that person's, and I'm not saying there's a beauty in having a spiritual leader. But if for some reason that spiritual leader is just a little off, and this I say this all the time, even when I start the purpose course, like, don't believe everything I say. This is a perspective. And there are many perspectives to take on many different ways. But I really want to understand something. Anyway, I was listening to this one Bible scholar, and he was talking about whenever you talk about the Bible, people get in their feelings. He said, and what's interesting is that people get in their feelings when you talk about Scripture and you talk about the Bible, and especially when you talk about the interpretation of those Scriptures, and they haven't even read it. And I sat back and thought, and he was like, right now, how many people are making an active practice of reading their Bible? Yet if you say something about the book, they get mad. And I thought, wow, that is profound in itself. And it's coming from a Bible scholar because he was about to drop something that was going to make folks mad, basically. I'm not going to even share what he shared because that would just, woo. But it gave me a place to look in terms of the creation stories that Genesis talks about.
There is a new frontier expressed by a doctor named Mark Hammond, MD. And the new frontier is functional medicine. And what amazed me and just opened me up about the functional medicine doctor is a doctor that goes all the way back the whole aspect of the body, your life, back to your birth. And even before then, and one kind of scratches their head, well, what are you talking about before then? Goes back to your mother and father. How were they living? What kind of environment they lived in, and so on. And what was their emotional makeup, and so on.
Yeah.
Before you were born. So that is something I've just recently found out about in a documentary I was watching called The Interconnection. And anyway, we're impacted by our whole life. I've seen a guy with a gray beard and soothsayer said, when you look in the mirror, you're looking at 1,000 years that caused you to be who you are right now, all your ancestors.
That's true.
That's his man.
More than 1,000.
That is tremendous when we think about it. And the functional doctors and this new field of functional medicine has found out about these little microbes in our gut called the microbiome. It's more of them than the cells that we have in our body. And they communicate to our brain more than our brain communicates to it. So they wonder, which one is the brain?
Yeah, you know what? I just this year I don't know if it's Dr. Hammond. I'm going to look him up, though.
Yeah.
But I came across, I've heard this notion, different cultures have said that the gut is the brain. So this is not new.
Right. So it's really not new, but see, we've been kept away from this because of some other focus or vision of the allopathic medical pharmaceutical industry. In this particular, somewhat one can say new era, which is really old, by feeding the gut a certain way can change your medical disposition. And
medical, mental, and emotional.
Right.
Yeah.
All of that.
Absolutely.
And there's a thing about transplanting healthy fecal matter, somebody that's healthy, into some patients that are not healthy, and the patients become healthy. Just some out of sight, not new.
But let's break this down real quick for folks, because somebody just said ill, right? I was having this conversation with my son. Right. We were talking about the circle, and then I want to get to Art because he's been waiting for a while as well.
Right. Okay.
But we were talking about the circle real quick, Mike. And I was telling him, he was like, where does boo-boo go? And I says, well, where boo-boo is supposed to go is into the ground so that it can fertilize our food. Now, mind you, he's 4 years old, so in his mind, it's not ill. He's listening wide-eyed. And he says, so the boo-boo goes into the ground? I'm like, yeah, and then our tomatoes and our lettuce and all our, our greens, all those things take the nutrients from the fecal matter and grow. It's the circle that the Creator intended.
Right.
So, yeah, fecal matter can have good stuff in it. Not supposed to go in your mouth, though.
So, right. So those are the principles of life, and I think all of us are searching truth. So I would say continue down that path, principles of life and truth. And future, I want you to touch on financial literacy.
Yep, I got that one too. Financial literacy, definitely.
Yeah.
And you know what we'll talk more about is this cryptocurrency as well in the new year. I think we need to cover that.
Bottom line to me is a lack of community codes of conduct and family value. We must not fear building the black family. And until we get back to those principles, which if you build the black family, all of the other principles are much, much, much easier to instill in each of us and your family, because you're starting from the head and working your way through. And your children and the rest of us will go out and do what we need to do. So I hope and pray that you this year build on the black family.
You know I will.
Fear.
You know I will.
Because you know and I know that the success starts only with the black family.